Dr. Conor Brady, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, James. Delighted to be here. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I couldn't find you on social media a couple of weeks ago, and I found you. I found you in the DMs. Why are you hiding so much on
I
socials?
was appalled when you said the difference when somebody with a following like yourself gets on, and like you can see your Instagram following just goes up 1,000. These figures are tiny to you now, but for us, when you're on 7,000, goes to 8. I do everything on Facebook like an old fella, so I don't do anything on Instagram. Karen, my that does everything for me. She just recently turned on Instagram, and we're seeing the benefit of that. But yeah, our social media needs to pick up big style. It's not where I'm strong, you know. I like writing stuff, and now I've got to do more of this. Got to do more, and I enjoy it. You know, I love it. I like being out the front, so have to turn it on a bit.
So to give people a bit of an inception as to how this all occurred, I've recently acquired myself a little Kelpie pup. He's crossed with a breed called Cooley, which I'd never heard of before.
Ooh.
And I had a dog trainer on, and we spoke about some things and, you know, best practices. But the whole nutrition side of things, I've been down a bit of a minefield, and I asked him about it, and he put his hands up and said, "I'm not a dog nutritionist." He goes, "Raw food diet is the way to go." So at this point, I was thinking, yeah, you know, I don't want to be giving the dog ultra processed foods, but as long as he's having, you know, meats and vegetables, then I'm sure that that's going to be fine. But
Yeah.
then looking into raw diets in a little bit more detail, I saw the complexities of it. And I remember one night I was cooking myself some food, and I kind of cooked some for the dog as well. And someone messaged me and they go, "James, that's not a complete meal for your dog." I'm not moaning. And the way they presented it, because people are always moaning in the DMs, they were like, "Can I just recommend that you read this book?" So I jump on Amazon right then. And I've
Boom.
got it here, and you've got one in the background as well.
Yeah.
Because I have this thing where when people do recommend something for me on socials, I think it's quite bad to ignore that advice, because someone out there was coming from a place of love for the dog. Please read this. And I thought, if the book's a load of shite, I could even then get the book up and be like, "Oh, this is a load of shite."
You owe me 30 quid. Yeah.
But on reading it, I was like, Jesus Christ. So if you give me and everyone listening or watching a little introduction into your work, I think it'd be better coming from you.
Yeah. First of all, you're a freak for buying that book, because that book is that's a book for kind of a person that's really in like, actually that's exactly who you are. Like it's the book is a collection of evidence, really. It's a kind of an argument. It's the A to Z of, you know, is this kibble okay for my dog? Like what does a dog eat when you let him off the lead? I mean, that most basic of questions we're confused about. You know, the whole first section is just describing, when you look at feral dogs, some of the biggest studies come from Australia, actually, because you have dingo populations you're trying to protect there, and so there's culls of domestic dogs, as there is in Italy and a few other places. So you can see diet studies, you can see when they're left alone, they eat a very, very meaty diet, very meaty diet. The only time they don't is when they're being reared by villagers who tend to give them poor scraps, kind of meat-free scraps, vegetable leftovers and stuff. So then they have a little bit of that in their diet, but when they're out and about doing their own thing, very carnivorous. So you start thinking then, right, these guys are clearly quite carnivorous. Look at this, look at that mouth. I mean, look at the nose, look at the shape of the animal. You just know he is a meat eater, you know, by looking at him, doing terrible damage to sheep and, you know, kiwis and all sorts of flightless birds and iguanas, anything that they can get their hands on, they will take. So we know this. So if that's the case, how are they doing on these really high carbohydrate diets? Where did that come from? You know, you look at these foods and they're 50-60% wheat and corn, and you think, wow, ultra processed food, you know, made by candy companies, in fairness, and you kind of go, wow, there must be some serious science behind that. So I was with guide dogs. I was over in Australia at the time, living there for 2 years. I can totally see why you went to Bondi Beach, and I can totally see why you're probably never going to leave. So it's the sunshine. It's the difference in the sunshine. The Irish and the English just we don't understand. Every day is sunny. It's just a delight. It just makes you feel so good. So I was in Perth, guide dogs. I was working with guide dogs as a trainer with guide dogs, and I was doing a bit of nutrition stuff, and that's what my doctorate was in. And suddenly I hear Brisbane Guide Dogs, of all places, and they had 200 dogs in training. Chris Lane was the CEO of Brisbane Guide Dogs. Phenomenal woman, phenomenal CEO. And she changes 200 dogs from dry to raw. And the veterinary bills fell by 82%. Now, this is anecdotal. She didn't publish it. It's not academic. It's just a quote from the CEO of a charity who had nothing to gain by saying that at the time. It's in the Courier Times newspaper, Brisbane's newspaper. I'm listening to this going, "Whew, that's convincing." I talked to the people involved, to some serious breed people in Brisbane Guide Dogs. I do a little experiment on the dogs in my charge at the time. I had about 18 dogs I was training on the side, 7 of them on non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like it's normal for kids in a class, and half them with terrible allergies, you know. Change them to fresh food and they do great. And when I went to my superiors and said, well, look at this, we can really save a lot of money, that we could do the same thing, and they were like, nope. And I'm like, oh, I'm really convinced that this is the way to go. And that's when we started separating. I started looking into it and going, okay, what's the science on this? Who is saying what? There must be great evidence for dry food. And when you look under the hood, when you look behind the curtain and you see the lack of science, it's just appalling. I mean, it's just, where are the studies that high carbohydrate diets are a good long time? Because these dogs are going through a serious obesity crisis, pancreatitis, kidney disease, 10 times more likely to get cancer than humans, and humans are the most cancer-stricken animals on the planet. Something's wrong. And high carbohydrate diets and all those diseases are not what we do in humans, and yet they're like a foundation stone in veterinary prescription diets. So I had many, many questions, and I went back into research, which culminated in that book 10 years later. Nearly destroyed my marriage. It was hardcore putting it together, but hopefully it seems to be going down okay.
I started reading through it, and you kind of have these moments where you're like, what the fuck, the world is lying to us. And I've gone through this with human nutrition before, and
yeah,
gone through this so many different times. And so then I start, it's a lonely journey, because I'm here trying to do better for my dog. At the same time, I'm worried I'm going to kill him. Now, I fucked up, first of all, where I was eating cereal one day, and I went on ChatGPT and I was like, can dogs drink milk? And I didn't specify what kind of milk. And in the end, I ended up giving him a bowl. I let him drink my milk at the bottom of the cereal, and he shit through the IV needle for a week. And I went to the vet, and the vet was like, he had to have his temperature checked up his ass. And it's the first time I'd heard him squeal. And I was like, and I'm there thinking, I'm the fucking worst dog parent ever.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, how can someone love a dog so much and put him through this? So I'm there. And at the moment, we're in an apartment. Don't worry, I thought I could bring up a Kelpie with an apartment and be active. I've realised I can't. I'm moving out of Bondi. I'm going somewhere where I can have a bigger garden. Right. I was cleaning up diarrhea from tiles for weeks because of my ill judgment trying to, give him a bit of milk. So then I've been overly paranoid with stuff. So when I've started to introduce raw, I'm watching him. My friend's like, relax, mate. I've given him a frozen chicken thigh or a frozen chicken leg, and I'm watching him crunch through the bones, and I'm there. I'm thinking about pulling the bone out. I'll let him eat a little bit. Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah.
And then my manager, out of all people, one of the people whose opinion I respect more than anyone else's in the world, he waits 10 days to say to me, oh, forgot to tell you, changed my dog onto raw, best thing we've ever done, changed his life for the better, reduced dog bills. And I was like, mate, I've been living in a world of my DMs of anecdote, people on left saying, yeah, feed your dog raw, change my dog's life. People on the right going, here's a picture of my dog choking on a bone.
Yeah.
Here's my friend Sally, who, she's in hospital because her dog's got salmonella.
Yeah.
I'm tearing my hair out, so I had to cut it all off. And I'm trying to navigate which way I'm supposed to be going. So it was a relief to read this stuff. And the way that you segment the bullet points at the end of the chapter, I put that on my story and someone goes, yeah, classic. They don't reference anything. I went, mate, there's fucking pages of reference. I'm just not going to put them on my story because people aren't going to
reading them. Yeah, that's it.
So it's a nerve-wracking journey. Put my mind at ease, and if someone else was in my shoes, what would you say to them?
No problem. So, okay, first of all, the fear thing, that you're going to do it wrong. That is very common when you come off the back of dry food, which is all percentages and exact amounts of vitamins and minerals, where you're looking at the back of the packet, or at least impressed by the pictures of the molecules in the front, as is your vet. And they hand over the pack. By the way, none of this is the vet's fault. Vets at the coalface, great people, working their hearts out. It's none of what we're going to be talking about when it comes to kind of having a problem with this food is really, I don't really blame any of the vets at all. I blame the lessons that the industry above them, but we can get to all that later. So I think a lot of it is that you're handed this by a trusted veterinary professional, and it's got a lot of science behind it. Science, I mean, it's science diet, it's prescription, it's incredibly medical, and you're handed this exact food, and you think that that's the way you feed the dog, because if you didn't, well, then the food won't be complete, in inverted commas, and your dog will get sick. And the very simple ways out of that would be, okay, your dog needs an exact amount of nutrients. Tell me, what's your RDA of calcium? And people will go, I don't know. And you go, well, you need huge amounts of it, and you don't know exactly how much you need. I don't know. Where do you get your calcium from if you don't drink cow's milk? Where do you get it? I don't know. I said, okay, all right, so how much calcium do you give the kids? I don't know. I said, you don't know how much calcium you gave the kids? Oh my God, what sort of a parent are you? We don't get told that information because it's not important. And are you telling me your dog is more technical than rearing a human kid? You know, we are given these bundles when we come out of hospital, and, you know, at some stage they come off mum, and then, you know, you start feeding it, and you just do your best, and everything is half pear, half mash, half pear, half veg, because we know they eat pear. And eventually then you have a 4 or 5-year-old who's battling because you won't eat anything green. And it's like, I'm just doing my best. I know that my kids need to eat whole food. You know that that's the way to the right body shape. Eat whole foods. You know, you'd be a long time getting fat and potatoes, but if you ultra process the food, it turns into something else. So we know these lessons, and it's the same in our pets. But because we're being told you must get things right, or if you don't get the right amount of manganese, his arse will fall off. You know, that stuff is not happening. The word complete, by the way, doesn't exist in human nutrition. Never thought of that. The nearest Nestle came to using the word complete is when they tried to use it for baby formula. And they pushed that message for 25 years until the campaign built strong enough with enough science to show, no, hang on, there is nothing complete about baby formula. You just cannot make something as technical as breast milk. There's just too many antibodies and, you know, colostrum and, you know, all these amazing things that you can't put together in a lab. And so we know it's second best. So the ads say, if you choose to follow on. So we can't make complete food for humans. We can't give complete food to poor people, but we've made complete food to dogs. Candy companies manage it. I mean, give me a break. You could just say, let's see the studies behind dry versus raw. You don't need to say this to a vet because it's just antagonistic. But if you were to ask somebody like me who's looked into this, you'd say there's about 5 studies, head-to-head studies, of dry versus raw-fed dogs. And you would think, my God, I thought there would be hundreds before the veterinary industry would start promoting it over real food, fresh food. But there isn't. And those studies just began in 2015 from the other side. And what we find is in all 5 studies, raw comes out on top by landslides. I mean, 2 of these studies were for inflammation, one of them was for joint issues. What was the most gut issues from 16,500 survey? Huge studies published in big top journals, nature.com. And so there is not a scrap of evidence, not a scrap, that would make you think this is a better product, this high carb, old fat. I mean, fat that's 6 months old sprayed on some kibble, like preserved with chemicals. You think that's better than a sardine? You know, it's just nonsensical. Every vitamin and mineral industry, the mineral supplement industry, has got big problems. Zinc oxide, iron oxide, manganese oxide. These are not good minerals. That's not what the body likes to absorb. So every single aspect contains mycotoxins and number of issues, on and on and on and on. And then you look at fresh food. And on top of all that, we then talk about safety. You know, it's what about the safety? What about the bone thing? We can get to that, but just the actual safety factors of complete raw dog food in the UK, which they're now feeding about 25% of the dogs in the UK, like 1 in 4 dogs, without a support of much by way of a vet at all. It just shows what the power of social media and the public. They know what's going on, and they can be very convinced very quickly by the facts when it's presented to them, because the veterinary industry is still not on board. But in all that time, with all those dogs fed, complete raw dog food made by a factory has killed less than 5 dogs. So less than 5 dogs. You think, wow, 5 dogs. In that time, like tens of thousands of dogs and cats are being killed by dry food. And we permit that hypervitaminosis and melamine and all these terrible scandals that went on. A big scandal study came out in Sydney guide dogs when 6 of the dogs went blind. And the scandal was 2 years ago, the dry food company in question was told in Lithuania, I think it was, that your dry food is making dogs blind. And it was only when the Sydney police dogs went down from eating that food that ABC News came on and said, what's the story with the blind? These dogs matter. And so we've got scandal after scandal of dogs getting harmed. So the safety is not on the side of dry food. And so they push safety, they push, you know, fear you'll get it wrong, fear your dog will be harmed. They're not getting harmed. With the vets that we have on part of the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society, we're not seeing any of these issues. All these issues people say they're having, these are people that don't feed the product. So why not just feed the product for a week and see, do your own little experiment at home and tell us there's a problem with dogs eating fresh food. You know, it's just not happening.
Google's very biased against it as well. So that's the first place I'd go to find advice. I'm like, is it safe for this? Especially after the milk incident. And it's saying, you know, some of the advice is good, but most of it is pushing you towards complete foods. So then I did exactly what you said. I was like, right. I remember in the book where you're talking about the teeth of a dog. And I was like, I could butcher this. Front teeth for pulling flesh, rear teeth for crunching bones, give or take.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I go, and he's just finished teething and his back teeth, Alfie's, are fucking massive.
They're
I'm
unbelievable.
looking at them and I'm going, oh, I'm getting excited for him, the idea of crunching a bone. And he gets so hyperactive in the evenings, about 8 p.m. He has this like zoomies, they call it. Do they call it zoomies in the UK?
Yeah,
as
they
well?
do. They use the word, yeah.
He goes fucking feral, zoomies. And I gave him a frozen drumstick the other day, and just seeing him crunch through it, it was actually soothing for him. For someone that gulps and guzzles all of his food so quick, he pulled away at the meat and then he crunched the bones, and it really relaxed him. And fuck dogs getting dopamine from it. I was getting dopamine from it.
Yeah.
And even that part of it, I was like, right, food going in, I'm already creating an argument that I want that for my dog in the evening. I want him to slow, enjoy, and eat his food. Then the other end, I'm monitoring his ass. Anything that comes out, I'm looking at his shit.
Yeah,
and I couldn't believe that putting raw meat in and raw bones was producing such firm poos.
Yeah.
But then I do rotate a few food groups. I gave him turkey the other day, and he shit through the eye of a needle. But then I'm like, oh, that's it. That's salmonella. That's it. That's it.
You've killed him. Yeah. I think that, like, you know, there's also different types of, like, we've got a problem at the moment with, like, the meat chain is not the cleanest food. Let's face it. I mean, it's not like zero bacteria. But like, you know, our food chain is not zero bacteria. If you look at the number 1, 2, 3 causes of salmonella, E. coli, and listeria in the US are fruits and vegetables. And you go, what? I was about to say meat, eggs. And you go, no, they're down the list. It's fresh fruit and veg are the top causes of listeria, salmonella, E. coli, the top food pathogens in the US. 1 in 7 Americans are sent to a doctor or a hospital with food poisoning each year. They permit salmonella in their chicken, if you can believe it. Up to 16% of the chicken on the shelf of the supermarket can have salmonella on it. It's zero salmonella in UK, Australia, Ireland. Anyway, so is the argument then that because we know fresh fruit and veg poison so many people because it's washed in dirty water, is the argument to remove fresh fruit and vegetables from everybody, or is it to clean up the horrible food chain? Our food chain is turning disgusting. You know, they are just going for mass production of chickens, mass production of beef, mass production of vegetables. And we are suffering. The soils that produce the vegetables are getting poorer. The nutrient density of the food is getting weaker. You have to eat 6 times the amount of oranges in Florida to replace 1 you ate 30 years ago. All this sort of stuff. But the meat chain, I can tell you from being on the inside, I was a dog food producer for 2 years. Years I'll never get back. That was hard work. But I'm telling you from being on the inside of the meat chain, it's a little bit hairy. You might need sausages after you see them being made, that kind of thing. So when you feed a meat that doesn't go well for your dog, let's say turkey, I would say, okay, you tried intensively reared turkey. It didn't work out for your dog on that day. I would say he's probably, if he's teething, he's 5 months old now. Alfie, is he? He's 5-6 months old. Teething all these adult teeth at the same time. Very painful. It's the best time to use raw meaty bones. He needs to chew, you know, so it's a good time to do it. But he's also a little bit unsettled, and just changing a food can be a bit strange. You might have acids and enzymes waiting for a certain meal and you lob in a different food. But we know intensively reared poultry can have a few issues. So sometimes you might find that your dog just doesn't get on with chicken. That's okay. You know, usually when you've fed a variety of foods to the pup in the first 5 months of life, which I was listening to one of your videos there, and you were enthusing. You've clearly been going to your classes and you're enthusing the importance of socialization. Get it done young. The dog needs to see this stuff young, and you're right. But it's also the same with food. We've got lots of studies to show it actually begins when mum's pregnant. You can spray apple mist in the air of pregnant rats and dogs, and the pups come out fighting over the apple tainted nipples. So this kind of triggering to protein starts at a young age, and then you feed them a variety of food. And studies show when you feed them a variety of food when they're young, they eat it later in life. Same with cats. Feed them veg when they're young, and you get all these vegans holding up cats eating broccoli, going, see, he loves broccoli. It's like, cats do not eat vegetables at all. They don't eat vegetables. They eat a bit of grass medicinally. But vegans don't, and cats and dogs don't feed them vegan pet food. Unfortunately, there's an industry coming up now to make a bit of cash, and they're promoting vegan pet food as an alternative, which, in my opinion, is a very bad idea.
It's like when you have a non-binary 3-year-old.
Oh yeah! Oh, there's a spicy potato. I was just finishing. I listened to your dog podcast there on YouTube. I was listening to that, and halfway through that was coming up, and I thought, oh, the lads are not afraid. But
you know, when someone holds their cat up and they're like, "My cat's vegan," and you're like, "Fuck you!" You're like, you're indoctrinating your fucking pet into your beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Virtue.
Get a vegetarian animal. Do you know what I mean? If that's your buzz, get a vegetarian animal. So yeah, non-binary 3-year-old, I totally agree, same thing. But so yeah, like, listen, I think there is a lot of confusion out there, a lot of fear, and when you type things into Google, they're going to give you, you know, the American Kennel Club or AFCO or insert dog group. All those dog groups are sponsored by Big Pet Food. And the problem is, to coin a phrase by Moynihan, is who pays for the pizza. So we have this massive problem. The book well, it wasn't just about canine nutrition, as you obviously got. That third section was what I obsess about today, which is bad science. And it's just like, this is a problem. We have people funding certain messages, and so Google sends you to the most popular, what they think might be the best read, not necessarily what's right. So you might go to the American Kennel Club and they say, yeah, feed dry food, sponsored by Hills. And you go, oh, okay, so is there anybody else? So getting the message from Google is quite difficult, but if you go onto social media, you get your answer very, very quickly. There is nobody on social media. Well, I say nobody, but look at you. You're a non-dog group, okay? And your fitness, your health, your positivity, your all this coaching, okay? But yet you ask your followers, what are you feeding? And more than 50% of them are feeding real food to their pets. That's amazing. I couldn't believe that. I shared it on my page straight away. So people are getting the message, but you're not going to get it from Google too quick. The websites that you want aren't topping as much as they should. But
it's crazy as well. You send someone into a supermarket and, everyone's like, oh, the first 2 aisles are the places you get the majority of your nutrition. The rest is ultra-processed bullshit.
Yeah.
Take them into a pet store and they're like, oh, everything in here is great. And you're like, I see these shelves stacked up with these 10-kilogram bags of dry food. And it was only after I started reading your book and started looking at these kind of ethical grey areas, I was looking and I was going, fuck, I bet that can sit on a shelf for months.
Oh,
and
yeah.
when looking at the FMCG food chain, if you're a business and you've got a product and you want it to, if you're there selling raw meat, you're like, fuck, you got to get rid of that in 7 days, or it's wasted product. You lose out if you didn't market your business or put it on the right place on the shelf. You can't run marketing campaigns and strategies to move it. With dry food, you could put it there. You can wait for the season to come around.
Glorious.
And when Alfie did over the shits, they gave us this hypoallergenic dry food. And I remember going to, I was like, what the fuck does hypoallergenic mean? I was like, why does he need to have this? And the same thing where even going to the vets earlier on, I was like, does he have to be castrated? And they were like, oh yeah, and straight away, boom, gave me this snippet. Oh yeah, we do this. And I looked at my missus, and even with the raw food stuff, she goes, oh, can't we cook it? And in the beginning, I was like, right, before you cook this chicken, let me do a deep dive. I'm going to go down into it. But the first one was how quickly the idea of neutering him came up. I was like, no, human beings do not castrate. You wouldn't castrate your children because they're misbehaving.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't castrate your kid because they're getting bullied. And if people have done that to their dogs, fair enough, they've done it through a path of love. But straight away, a few months in, I was like, why are you talking to me about castrating the love of my life?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the castration thing, the neutering thing is a big problem. There's a famous vet in the natural world, Karen Becker, in huge following from herself and Rodney Bibb, and but she did a great turnabout video where 6 or 8 years ago she was promoting neutering, and then a few years ago she's on a video kind of crying saying, I've done enormous harm. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, what's she talking about? This was 2014. I come from a business, a guide dog's business where you neuter young, terrible orthopedic issues as a result. So we're saying, okay, what's with this neutering jazz? So I start researching. I wrote a piece there that got shared, it must be got 100,000 shares now at this stage. It was the busiest thing on my website, and you take a bit of flack because people that run animal shelters in pounds, we've dog overpopulation problem, and they say neuter because it's the responsible thing to do. Okay, if it was the responsible thing to do, first of all, not forget the health bullshit about it. It's the thing to reduce the dog population, control the dog population. Ireland, the UK, Australia, and the US have a dog overpopulation problem. They also have aggressive neutering policies. So how's neutering working out? Well, it might be working out. Okay, well, let's look at countries that don't let you neuter. Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. They don't neuter their dogs. How many pounds has Sweden got for 13 million people? 1 pound. Ireland has 200. So perhaps it's not the neutering. The neutering's not working. And the reason it doesn't work is because when you tell a population to neuter their dogs, who neuters them? Responsible people that go, okay, I'll neuter them, I'll do what I'm told. Those people never would have had accidental litters. It's the irresponsible pet owners that are letting the dogs walk around farms and alleyways off lead. They're the dogs having accidental pups. Ireland is that on steroids because in 2009 in the bust, the Irish government tax incentivised farmers to create puppy farms. So we just send all our unwanted dogs up to Sweden and they're paying for them because they don't. Anyway, so it doesn't hold water to say it's a welfare type of thing. Then you've got the health side of things. Vets saying it reduces cancer. Show me the study. Show me the study you're basing it on. It'll reduce testicular cancer if you don't have any nuts. Okay, sure. The most survivable cancer you could possibly imagine. It's the one you want if you had to pick, believe it or not. Maybe not in both. But I'd take one and just get a prosthetic. A nice perfect round egg. But if they say it reduces other cancers, and they go, well, actually, that's the argument is not there for it. It actually increases many cancers, bone cancers, all sorts of growth deformities, hip dysplasia, behavioral issues, because all your sex hormones, but most importantly, it's the growth plates. Your sex hormones stop your body growing. So when you see your nephew and he's like 11 years old and you go and see him 2 years later and he's grown like 3 foot, it's like, holy shit, that's obviously the effect of the sex hormones on him. You chop them off and you're messing with a process. Suddenly you've got these orthopedic issues. So from a cancer, health, longevity, illness, you're more prone to be ill when you don't have your nuts. There's just so many arguments against it that absolutely nobody is promoting neutering before being sexually mature. So if you had to do it in your dog for some reason, because your dog's testicles offended you, can you believe Facebook blanks them out? Can you believe they blanked them out? And if you try to show a neutering picture, like bulldogs always have great nuts, and so you use them when you're talking about neutering, and Facebook blurs them out or blurs the image out and says this might be offensive. Dogs nuts, can you believe that? But that's the way we are today as a society. It's just ridiculous. But we accept these messages and we say, okay, we'll do it, but that doesn't increase the health of your pet at all. So if anything, it turns into a bit of a lazy pig. So I don't see the benefit of it at all. It doesn't make him mad. We aren't aggressive males because we kept our testicles, because we don't have anybody to compare it to, because we don't chop testicles off people for no reason. It's the same with the girls. A hysterectomy because you think she might have a baby. I've got 2 girls. You think I'm going to give her a hysterectomy? I'm going to do my best to stop her getting pregnant before she leaves the house, you know. So it's ridiculous. The neutering thing really bothers me because of the orthopedic issues that we know it results from. We've got much healthier dogs. Studies show on raw of 240 German Shepherds, it was protective to these issues. Because think about it, you're feeding dry food that has, you know, a really high carb, insert carb, it doesn't matter, wheat, corn, whatever the cheapest crap is. Sometimes they say grain free, but it's potato and pea. It's high carb because that's cheap, and then a cow's toenail in it, and then a George Jetson mineral pill, and that's your kind of dry food. What it doesn't contain is glucosamine and chondroitin. And it's like everybody and their sister knows glucosamine and chondroitin is good for joints. I had a bad knee, 3 operations in a row to fix my knee, and eventually the 3rd time the guy says, you're not doing your rehab, you've just stopped playing football. And I'm in floods of tears. I'm 35. I thought I was going to be playing at least 5-a-side for years, and they stopped me, and so I had nothing else to do. I wasn't a gym guy. I was a ball sport person, tennis and football, and the 2 things I couldn't play anymore. And walking out on the 3rd operation, I kept on saying to him, I was doing the rehab, I was in the gym, I struggled to put muscle on my legs. I don't know why that is. You can help me with that another time. He turns around and he goes, what are you eating, by the way? And I said, I was always in good enough shape, I thought. And I said, oh, well, I was vegetarian for 12 years. And he goes, there you go. And I'm like, no offense, dude, but I'm a nutritionist. I do nutrition every single day in my life. There's very little you can tell me about nutrition. Just do the surgery and keep quiet. And he's like, well, so where'd you get your glucosamine and chondroitin from? And I'm like, oh, shit. And he goes, yeah, you're not eating meat in the bone. You're not eating any animal matter. Where do you think glucosamine and chondroitin comes from? You take cartilage of an animal when you need it. So what the pet food industry does and what the veterinary industry promotes is to remove all these the joint material. And joints are not just glucosamine and chondroitin. And I mean, by joint material, I mean like a chicken wing. You know, all that cartilage and shit in it. That's the stuff your dog needs. That's why his teeth are shaped that way. Big carnasal teeth for crunching and gulping down that stuff. In that is glucosamine, chondroitin, collagen, hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, glucagon, glutathione. All the stuff that if your knees are wrecked, they're the supplements you're supposed to be taking to get you back on track. That is joint material. They just remove the stuff from dry food, so your puppy doesn't have the building blocks for his life. And at 8 years old, when your Kelpie is walking like a coffee table, they go, here, take glucosamine and chondroitin at a book a pill. And it's like, now you can have cartilage. Wrong. Your dog should have been getting those building blocks every day. And it's not just that. It's like bioactive compounds and antioxidants and things like coenzyme Q10. How much is that does your dog need? We don't really know, but it's got to be in the diet now and again. This stuff keeps you strong. The mentality today is when your dog gets sick, we've got amazing stuff for your dog. So chronic illness is exploding in pets. Pet insurance costs exploding. But how are we doing? How's longevity in the dogs doing? We're struggling. We're struggling to buy insurance. These dogs are living shorter lives by any measure that we can apply to them at the moment. Things aren't going well for pets, so cutting these crucial compounds out is not a good idea. I mean, colourful fruit and veg, a little bit of that in your dog's diet, you know it's good for you and the kids, it's going to be good for him, you know. So a little bit of that in the dog's diet is fantastic, but the main event is the meat on the bone, a little bit of organ meat, as you were alluding to earlier. It's a little bit of a leap initially because we don't eat raw meat, and so we think that's dangerous. But we don't have any humans actually being poisoned by raw dog food. It's not happening. It may happen. So they talk about May. And you go, well, we have 132 people poisoned by dry food from 2006 to 2016, 132, 4 separate studies, half them toddlers under 2 years of age. Dun, dun, dun. And did a vet ever tell you not to handle dry food with your hand? No, never mentioned it. Did say raw dog food might be dangerous. How many did fresh dog food poison? 0 in that time. We've got enormous safety studies now of how safe it is. It might even have a vaccinating effect of feeding your dog a fresh food diet, which is really interesting. Big Helsinki study, University of Helsinki study. But the point is, like you said, you got to get this dog out and about. We've got this hygiene concern, but now there's a hygiene hypothesis where if you live too clean, your dog doesn't get what he needs. So now they're saying that if your dog hits the forest floor and gets into the muck as quick as you can, you were saying you got that pup out as quick as you could. That is the best advice. Very few vets will be pushing that. Vets will be saying, well, we'll vaccinate the hell out of him, and then when he's totally vaccinated up, he can do it. Well, mother's antibodies are in the pup at 8 weeks. So you can vaccinate all you want at 8 weeks, but the mother's antibodies are in the way. That's why they have to hit you multiple times with the vaccine. The advice from the dark side and the more natural world is to put off that initial vaccine. And don't be afraid to take him out and explore muck and meet the friend neighbour's dog that you know is safe. Don't bring him down the local dog park where there's every bloody weirdo's dog and manky thing licking his face. Yeah, you're asking for it. But experience out there in the wild, and it's just so important for these dogs. And instead we keep them in our apartments and we keep them safe. But you're not keeping them safe. You're not building a robust body with that, So that it's a long answer. I'm going red in the face trying to enthuse how important this stuff is in a young creature. It's the exact same for humans. It's the same stuff on dogs.
I've got so many points here that quickly as well, is it possible to give a dog a vasectomy?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Why the fuck aren't people, saying, right, let's keep the testicular function, let's stop him from, being able to impregnate another dog.
Yeah.
That should be, if it's a population thing, and like you say, by all of dogs getting neutered, surely that then puts the power into the breeders and the dog farms.
Yeah.
Because someone goes, oh, I'd love to have another Kelpie. They have to go to a breeder because they can't put on Facebook Marketplace, say, I've got a beautiful 7-year-old Kelpie here, need it to make it, whatever. Yeah. So then you've got that, which I think makes sense. And then you should say to all female dogs not to have hysterectomy, but to ensure that any males are in the area or whatever. That doesn't make sense. Moving through to the kind of next part. Funnily enough, a friend of mine has just gone to Turkey this week to help out people disaffected by the earthquake. Yeah. So he's done a big fundraiser, raised loads of money. Nice. And he's there with these massive Turkish mountain dogs, and he's chucking bones with meat on it. And he's saying on his story oh yeah, before anyone says anything, this is what they grew up on. I message him, I go, mate, I'm talking to the guy tomorrow. What you're doing is perfectly right. And he's there trying to, have cause and effect the other way around. He goes, by the way, this is how they live. Don't have a go at me. Don't attack me for it. Yeah. But it's almost seen so contrarian that the advice you're giving now is held in almost like a negative light. And it really annoyed me. I got really pissed off that Alfie, one of his nuts didn't drop until maybe 4 or 5 months. And they were like, oh yeah, if that doesn't drop, we'll just take it out. Yeah. And I said, can he keep one nut? And she said, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. I go, what do you mean no one's ever asked you? I said, he's keeping one. I said, if that doesn't come out, you can have it. When both his nuts dropped, I celebrated. I was like, his nuts are going nowhere near the fucking vet.
Yeah, and yeah. Keeping one, you would think that's something on offer. Why wouldn't that be an offer? I mean, surely that's just a psst, little snip. They do the snip on dogs. They do the snip on girls. And they also, when they're finished, they put a little V on the dog with a tattoo, so people don't nick your dog. So if they see he's got his nuts, it makes him more attractive for robbery. Certainly in Ireland, we love robbing dogs. It is very, very common. They'll snatch them straight off your balcony. Tied up outside shops. There's businesses on it. So if they see dogs with testicles, that's a hot topic. But if he's got a tattooed green V on him, they don't rob him.
That annoys me so much that I would love to publicly hang people that do that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Outside town hall, if you rob dogs in this village, this is what's going to happen to you. I totally agree with you. But it's awful. And even this is too dark, so I'm going to say it anyway.
Yeah, say it.
There's two reasons why they rob your dog. One, like a dog like mine, he's a wobbly cocker spaniel that I rescued. If nobody was going to rescue this dog, I was going to have to. My God, I mean, on a weekly basis, my wife's saying like, "We got to get a dog trainer." It's like, I am a dog trainer. He's like 6 years later. I'm looking for arthritis. Come on, arthritis, and he's just not slowing down. He's just absolutely mental. Why was I saying that? Oh yeah, so they rob dogs for two reasons. One is to captive breed them, boys and girls, and the other is to use them in fights. And if a dog like Dudley gets robbed, he's not being used for breeding. He's being used in fights, and he's not being used because of his ability to fight. He's been used as bait, and it's like that was a big issue in Ireland for a while, because dog fighting was a thing that Ireland and unfortunately Britain are kind of keen on. There's a bit of it. There's an underground kind of there's an industry, and somebody said that to me recently, and they said, "Well, do you know where they'd rob your dog?" And I was thinking, "It won't be for breeding." He goes, "No, it'd be like tape his muzzle closed and throw him into the ring." And I was like, "What? They do that?" Because they do it with small dogs. They need dogs to kind of, so they need a supply, because most of the time they breed their own little mutts just to do that, to get the dog going so he's ready to go. And I'm like, anyway, I'm so sorry for going into that, but there
was an issue in Bondi where in Marks Park people were putting poison in raw beef and putting it in the dog park, and there were a few fatalities in a day. And like, I hate that. I think if you want to see people fight to the death, put some people in there. You know, let them bare knuckle it out.
That's it.
But yeah, it kind of, it breaks me a bit in that respect. Thank God, Alfie. The biggest problem we have with him, if you were to say what is the worst thing you're doing with your dog, I'd openly admit I never leave him alone. Like that is, I love that dog too much, and even to the point, say he's going to be alone for half an hour. I text my mate. I go, "What time are you getting back from work?" "Why is that?" "I just need you in the apartment. I just need you in the apartment."
Yeah, I heard you saying that beforehand, and I thought maybe it's just a new thing, you know. Maybe you're getting broody, James. But like, you know, most people are like that about their dogs, and most of their dogs. I've had a good few dogs now at this stage, and like I think about it with some dogs, and I think about it with some less with others. I think now and again in our life we can look back of the few dogs. I can think of one dog that really stood out, that I would have taken a bullet for this dog if anybody had tried to take the dog. That dog really, well, I was completely unbelievable bond with her. Went through a lot with her, you know, a couple of bad things that happened, and she was there, so there was probably that attachment. And when she was gone, oh my God, I was absolutely devastated. I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't get into the vets. I was just, and I've had friends die in front of me. I was like, this is just, it was another level of, maybe it was all probably connected, but like, it was devastating. So I've had that with a dog, and maybe you've got that now with Alfie, where people, I hate the little quirky words that they use in the dog world, but heart dog. And so, but when you ask somebody, what's that dog you had, they'll come up with straight away, no matter how many dogs, they could be breeders, and they'll have that one dog. So Alfie could be yours straight off the bat. You know, you get this mad connection with a dog. Somebody was explaining it in a book there recently, can't remember, and they were trying to explain how dogs and humans got together so quickly, how we got this connection. And he said, but can you imagine when the earth changed? Okay, there was a big change when dogs popped up. There was a massive change in the environment, and 37 wolf species popped out overnight. You know, from the one grey wolf, there's 37 wolf species, and then the dog comes out soon after, filling up all these feed niches. Eventually, we get this wolf, and he goes, we were just small little tiny packs of people roaming around plains and forests, but the world became more foresty, and so we teamed up with dogs. He goes, now this dog not only protects your village, which is crucial, because look, imagine how much but they help you hunt and find food, and they don't eat your food when they find it. He said, like, they are indispensable part of life. And he goes, that was the bond that kept it. And he said that was 10,000 years, 20,000 years before we got agriculture. And the dog said, give us a bit of bread. You know, then we suddenly started farming our own food. But before that, they were like a left arm. They were critical. And I just thought, that's the sort of bond I had with my previous dog. Like, it was just, you know, ride or die, you know. So, but you have it with a pup as well. I think you would do anything for the pup. But it's funny how they get you. They really do.
I can't also believe how much instinctual tendencies they have. Like, for us, it's crazy for us to think how much is actually instinct, where we think about everyday life or whatever. And the fact that he's a working dog, and he probably would have worked with, you know, sheep on a farm or cattle. So I don't know if this is just me maybe making conclusions myself. At my missus's house, there are these white pillows that are fluffy, and he goes mental for them. No other pillow, tassels, whatever, nothing. But these white ones, and I'm like, it's because it looks like a sheep. And
Yeah, maybe.
he would have been in a
maybe.
herding environment. So when we were first started to train him, if when we were working on his recall, nothing would happen. But if you sprint away from him, he would sprint and cut you off. And
Yeah.
cut you off and trip you up. And I was like,
Wow, yeah.
he's fucking herding us.
Yeah.
I was like, so then I was like, how is that in his brain? And but the same way, if we've been coexisting with dogs for 10,000 years, there's probably instinctual tendencies that we have that have
Yeah.
evolved. In a similar way to dog, because if you think about the agricultural revolution and farming and dogs being used in a working capability, surely there are instinctual properties that we have as far as our relationships to dogs. It's not a novel response
true.
in which we have.
Yeah,
So
true. I
I
find
think
that
it could go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I never really thought about that. It is amazing that some dogs are born with, like, working collies that just are born with it, and then they breed from that working collie, and the pups come out with this almost the same skills. Like, even that sort of stuff is unbelievable. But yeah, same for us. It's interesting that I had never thought about it. But I can sense it. You have it with pups particularly, that you don't want anything to go wrong, and there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear out there today to, if you don't feed him this product, he will get harmed. If you don't vaccinate him to absolutely every single illness you've ever heard of, he's going to get harmed. If you don't give him flea treatments, even though he doesn't have fleas, he's going to get harmed. Worm treatments for dogs that know worms. These things are nonsensical, because I've got a kid and I don't deworm her every month. She can get worms. She's a 1 in 10 chance of getting worms in primary schools in Ireland and the UK. Do we deworm our kids before they get worms? No. If they come back with worms, you'll barf in your mouth and you'll find the product that sorts it out. It's the same with nits. You don't put chemicals on them that nits will drop down dead off them. This is why we have bloody dengue fever and river blindness and all sorts of terrible insect diseases decimating people, but we don't have preventative chemicals for it. So these insecticides are not without harm. They're not without side effects. And the point is, they may well just be absolutely useless. There is articles in newspapers, San Francisco Bay are banning dogs with flea treatments on them from swimming in the bay. The river board in the UK stop letting dogs with insecticides on them swim, because they're so potent they can affect the insect life. So I was like, wow, is there any need to put this on? So I might just wait for the issue to happen. We're terrified of parasites, but not on ourselves. So it's a little bit, it's a lot of fear. A lot of fear has you looking at that animal and fearing all the time. The separation thing is something else, but I think from the food and the over medication and that kind of stuff, I think when you start looking into it, you start questioning everything. You go, geez, you're a bit wrong in the nutrient, and you go, oh, you're a bit wrong in the dry food. And you start looking at everything else and you go, there is major questions to be asked here on a lot of things. And most people start by looking at the pet's food, and then they start looking at their own food. The amount of people that say, I cut out ultra-processed food because I started learning about how insidious this stuff is, how 60% of our shopping trolleys is ultra-processed food now. And it's clearly fueling the obesity crisis. And when people understand food and how it works, that's how people, and they often, the dog now is becoming the launch pad for that, which I think is kind of cool. It's gone the opposite way. Normally we learn this and apply it to the dogs, but now we're learning on the dogs and applying it to ourselves. So there could be a human benefit here.
It's interesting you say about the fruit thing as well. So that's another thing where fruit and vegetables, having a high fiber intake, are a massive predictor of reducing, chances of all-cause mortality in human beings. So we like to give that to our dogs as well. So my girlfriend as well today, she was like, "Oh, can you ask him about veg? Are we giving Alfie enough veg?" Because recently, I've been, even when I look at the front cover of your book, I'm thinking, I don't know what half this shit is. This
Yeah.
thing. So I'm like, at the moment, I give him chicken drumsticks. I give him chicken breasts if I feel like he's had too many bones. The one night I gave him too many chicken necks, he threw one up, but it was only one. I looked at that and I was like, that's only one chicken neck, and I was buying his silence with that one, so I don't care if he throws it up. I give him chicken livers and we give him an egg now and then. And then I haven't given him a shell because I read about dogs choking on a shell. Go on YouTube and there's a woman that gets the shells, then she bakes them, then she crushes them into a powder. I was like,
I'm doing that. Yeah, I love you and all, Alfie, but I'm not baking bloody chicken shells. That sounds brilliant. It's a brilliant effort. I think any effort is a pretty good effort at this stage. You could actually, the raw dog food movement began in Australia. Actually, it began with two vets, Ian Billinghurst, who's a legend in Australia, still working. I do bits and pieces with him. He knows me well. I love a bit of Ian. Ian Billinghurst and Tom Lonsdale, two raw vets that in the 90s, it was not cool to be talking about feeding pets raw dog food, and they were shunned for 10 years, and it took a terrible toll on their career. But now they are seen as the raw dog fathers. So you can look at some of the raw dog foods that these guys have put together in Australia, but you can look at any complete raw dog food. Have a look at what these companies are putting out, because these companies are putting out what they know to be the best idea of from a ratio kind of mix point of view. So you can have a look at the back of the packet and go, okay, it contains a load of meat. They call them 80-10-10s, like 80% meat, 10% organ, 10% bone. But I hate using percentages and fractions and stuff, because that's not how we feed, you know. But I think at the start people need a bit of guidance. So what you're doing there is you went straight for DIY, which is kind of brave, because most people, they lean on a complete raw dog food and they start that way, and they say, I'll dip my toe in and I'll buy the best quality raw dog food I can find, which is the usual stuff you'd apply to meat, outdoor reared, grass fed, you know, all this sort of stuff. That does make a difference. Intensively reared meat has no omega-3 in it. It's high in omega-6, which is inflammatory because it's fed corn as opposed to being out to forage out in the wild. Vitamin D, all that kind of stuff. There's a big nutrient content difference in outdoor reared meat. So if you wanted to be fancy about it but simple, you go for a complete raw dog food and say, I'm going to pop things in and pad that out a bit. Because you kind of know that despite them pretending it's the best food ever made and it's made on bloody sirloin steak and fillets and shit, you know those guys don't put that stuff in the food. So you can start with a complete raw dog food to take the edge off, because that way you know they've got a bit of meat, bit of organ, which is hard to find, liver, heart, kidney, where do you get heart, and a bit of bone is in there. And then you just put in your if the dog's the right size, like Kelpie size, you throw them a chicken thigh, which is a great piece of meat. You can crack in your eggs, a sardine. You buy your sardines by the kilo and you give them a sardine a day, and your table scraps, your bit of veg. We'll talk about that in a sec. And that becomes his diet. So your bric-a-brac approach is alleviated by the fact he's got a complete raw in there, which they say is complete. You know, they have to use the same terminology as dry food or people freak out. So even though nobody believes the word. So that's one way to go about it. So you know he's getting a kind of a decent mix. They feed that in the morning, and your own mix, as you just mentioned, at night time. I think where the mix that you mentioned kind of falls down a little bit is that the organ meats are like the sexiest bit of nutrition for dogs. So when carnivores are feeding on prey, they're going for the organ meats first. They're getting in there and they're taking out the organs. Liver, deeply nutritious storage organ with all the bells and whistles. It's cool. It's got so much good stuff in it that you can't feed too much liver. It needs to be 5% of the diet, 10% of the diet.
That was a question I had, because I saw a cheat sheet on raw feeding. And it was like, only 5% liver, and I go, I've been giving him massive chunks.
Yeah, that's the one you got to be careful on. Yeah.
And then, just rewinding. Then, actually, I've been buying these raw food patties. Bath.
Yeah,
they're called Bath.
Terrible term.
And but I saw them in the frozen section of Pet Barn, and I was like, do you know what? There are going to be mornings, especially where if Alfie wakes up before I want to wake up. The other day, I gave him some frozen chicken. Legs at like fucking 6 a.m, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch him, but I want to be back asleep. So I bought these patties. So in the morning, if he wakes me up wanting to eat, I give him one of the patties, I crack an egg on it, and I'm like, right, now shut the fuck up. I'm going back to sleep. I don't need to watch him eat it. And then he'll hop on the bed 15-20 minutes later, and we can get another hour in bed. So then I actually, like you were saying, I was like, there's going to be some of these real, gizzard. I was like, what the fuck is a gizzard? These things in the ingredients. But then again, like you say, I didn't have the trust that there was like good quality stuff there. So I was like, I'm going to give him 1 or 2 of these a day, especially if I need someone else to feed him. Yeah, so if I leave him with my missus' dad, I don't want him getting raw meat out and having to monitor the dog. Yeah. Give him one of them patties. When I come home, I'll give him some legs, and you supplement that on top. I'll go get some of like the Kangaroo Valley fucking real expensive eggs. I'm looking at him, I'm like, you're eating better than me.
Yeah. Everyone says that. I mean, you've got people eating like, I only feed them venison, outdoor reared meat and game. And it's like, what are you having for dinner tonight? Like pizza, ultra processed chicken, that you've chicken breast with the breadcrumbs and crap on the outside and some frozen section. It's like, that's what you're feeding yourself. So definitely the dogs are eating better. That's a fact. Do you know, in 2009 in the bust, the last market to decrease was spending on pets. Spending on kids fell before spending on pets. So that shows the mentality of where we are with our dogs. We really trying to look after them. Sadly, people then spend really money on really expensive dry food, and you are buying Weetabix with a cow's toenail, and you're spending $10 a kilo on it. like 3 times the price of fresh chicken from Coles. It is madness, you know. So what you just said about that with the complete raw dog food, that is the best way to start if people were ever thinking about doing this. It's like complete raw dog food off the shelf. Buy some good quality brands. Most of them deliver to your door now, so you can find good brands. They make you buy 10 kilos, 20 kilos, which is 1 freezer drawer, 2 freezer drawers of space. So you might need to think about that. If you have a bigger dog, a German Shepherd, and you're living in an apartment, that buddy, he's going to go through meat. He needs a bit of space. He needs, and so people tend to buy complete raw dog food. But these companies also sell you, do you want a couple of kilos of sardines, a couple of kilos of duck necks? A duck neck's a wonderful meaty bone. It's like the size of a big fat carrot, and it's only got 7 little round bones in it. The chance of your dog choking on a duck neck is zero. We've never, do you know, we're a nation of, you know, millions now, but there's maybe 200, 300 raw feeding vets in our group here, and they've never seen one issue with a bone. In their clinic, one clinic's got 27 raw vets working for them, so these are enormous sample sizes. So the vets, when they are giving out the right information, which is raw meaty bones with flesh on the outside of them, they're fine. The issues that people are seeing with bones is that, unfortunately, pet shops are selling bones, and they sell these dry marrow bones that people stick peanut butter in and stuff, and then your Labrador comes along and goes, bone, thank God I need some bone, and starts putting enormous, this is some of the hardest bite pressure in the animal kingdom, on this bone that's designed not to break. They're circular for people that are just listening, or triangular. Like, these are big leg bones to hold up a half-ton animal. And so the dog starts to put enormous bite pressure on this funny shape, and one of two things is going to happen. Because their teeth don't join at the back, ours do because we're omnivores, we grind forage like that. Theirs side past to the back, this enormous back teeth go chop, so they don't join, they chop past each other. So when the dog's teeth skid off a big bone, or a big knuckle bone, it slams closed like that, and the teeth ram up and they can crack the teeth. That is a bone, that's a tooth fracture you don't want, and it only comes from eating these enormous, very hard to digest bones, break bones, or the bone gives way and their teeth break. So don't buy bones from pet shops. Do not buy the ones wrapped in plastic. That's a Serrano ham bone from a pig that's been cooked twice. So when you cook protein, when you overcook that piece of steak, it's harder to digest. So you can imagine what happens when you overcook a bone. You now make that bone harder to digest, and you don't want to be passing undigested shards of bone through your back passage. So raw bone doesn't have any of those issues. We're not seeing any issues. In fact, we've got a safety study of 200 dogs followed for 6 years. They were fed oxtail, and the vets at the end of it found 0 issues in the teeth. 0 after 6 years of eating a very hard beef bone. So we've got good safety studies behind it. Not to say your kid's not going to choke on chewing gum or the bread roll or vegetables. That can happen, and you might be the poor sucker. But it's highly unlikely, and the benefits of a clean mouth, like dirty teeth, are so bad. 8 out of 10 dogs have some form of gum disease by 3 years of age. 8 out of 10 are dry and can fed, and that's the reason. They need hassle factor in their diet to keep their teeth clean, unless you want to be one of these dopes that's brushing their dog's teeth every day. I mean, who does that? I mean, give the dog a meaty bone and you'll be fine. So feeding right for the type. A medium-sized bone for a medium-sized dog. You can feed slightly larger, chicken carcasses, turkey necks, wings, all sorts of stuff. And those parts cost very little. So suddenly if you had, I've got a German Shepherd here, he's going to eat the jocks off me. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to get a second job to feed this animal. It's the most expensive animal to have in the animal kingdom. So you can feed complete raw dog food of medium quality, and you might buy 10 kg boxes of turkey necks, and you buy that material for like $1 or $2 a kilo, because nobody eats turkey necks. They're delighted to be selling it to you, and suddenly, you know, 30% of your dog's diet is turkey necks. Pity about him. It's getting unbelievable quality food compared to 95% of dogs. So there's a million ways out of it. DIY puts too much pressure on you, you know. Just like you said, initially it's like, oh shit, I'm going to get it wrong, I have to think about this, where am I going to get kidney, what's a gizzard, and but you know, there's easier ways out of it, for sure. I think the complete takes the edge off initially.
That's reassuring. Is there also, let's say you've got a dog who's teething, going through like behavioural issues, and bones really seems to like calm him down and buy you time. Is there an issue with maybe having a too high a percentage of bones, or would they just pass it as excrement?
Yeah, the calcium's a devil. So calcium, if you eat too much calcium, it'll dry you out. And but the bone, natural minerals that come to you in nature. See, the body doesn't mind vitamins. They come from the land of the living, Vita. But minerals are inorganic. The body does not like zinc and calcium and iron. They're not invited to the party. They don't cross the gut membrane alone. They have to be holding the hand of a carbon molecule. They have to be chelated. So the body sees the carbon molecule, welcome to the party, and then you bring your mate in. So that's how those minerals get in. So What was the question? I've got off on one about
So like,
minerals.
can I give him too much bone,
Oh,
or
too
is
much
there an
bone,
issue?
yeah. So natural minerals, outside of supplement minerals, too much supplement minerals, too right, you can give them too much of that. You've got to get that bang on right. But natural minerals, the body just passes it out because minerals don't come even in nature. So no, your body is absolutely adapted to, oh, there's just too much calcium here, I don't need the rest, you poo it out. There becomes a problem if you fed loads of bone to the dog. Like you, you found 20 chicken carcasses for nothing at the side of the road and you gave them to your Labrador, he'll poo bullets. He'll have very dry, hard poos, and he's not going to enjoy it. Now, that's not recommended, but generally you'll get the idea from your dog. People, they use this figure: your dog needs about 10% bone. And I'd say, have you seen what 10% beef bone does to a dog? Like, it bungs them up. 10% chicken bone, maybe, but a chicken is dead at 10 weeks of age. A cow is dead at a year old. Those two bones are completely different. So it just shows the maths that we use, the figures, they're just plucked out of the sky. They're just nonsense. And they made sense a few years ago to give us a guiding idea, but you've got to feed the dog in front of you as you would feed your kid. And some kids don't like this or that, or they don't digest this or that, and that's just the way we are. We've got gut flora set up for this, and we've got genetic quirks, and your dog might be able to take a lot more bone than your neighbour's dog. You'll know very quickly that, you know what, I can't give him a whole beef rib. Your kelpie's too small for it. But if you give it to him, he's going to try and eat the whole lot of it because they're pigs, kelpies. The two oldest dogs in the world are kelpies. There was Bluey. He was 29 years and 6 months old. He was the Guinness Book of Record holder. 1910 that dog was born in. And he held the record until very recently when Maggie, another kelpie in Australia, maybe the Australians are just bullshitting about the age of them because they couldn't prove the ages of these dogs. But this was the oldest, but the oldest dog has just been found in Portugal as of a couple of weeks ago, not a kelpie. But it shows that kelpies are some of the longest living dogs out there. They really are. They're very robust animals.
It was one of the reasons I fell in love with kelpies when I first saw them. Like, there was just something about them. I've always been empathetic towards foxes growing up.
Oh, yeah.
So I love the size, the shape,
Yeah.
the bushy tail.
Yeah, yeah.
I look at foxes and I think they're cute. I didn't
Yeah.
like the idea they were hunted, but then I didn't own any chickens.
Yeah, true, yeah.
When I saw a kelpie, it reminded me of like a mix between a fox and a wolf, and I was
Yeah.
very drawn to it. And I knew they were crazy, but I was like, I'm willing to get in bed with this crazy
Yeah.
people. And then every kelpie owner that I'd met was like, oh, they're the best. They're
Yeah, they
loving,
are.
they're loyal, they're intelligent. I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
So exactly what you say there was exactly what I needed to hear, because I've got some chicken frames that I bought. But then in my head, I'm like, oh, well, I gave him too many chicken necks the other day and he threw one up in bed. Then when he threw up, I was like, salmonella.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I was like, okay, cool. I might give him a chicken frame, see how it goes. One thing that I saw with giving him drumsticks a few nights ago was that it was the first time I saw him stop eating, where there was half of a chicken drumstick left and he kind of looked satiated. And I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. Take that before he changes his mind.
Yeah.
Rewinding back to something that we kind of skipped over as well, vegetables, fruit, fiber. Is it as important in a dog's diet as it is in a human's? Where are the kind of contrasting effects between it?
Okay, yeah. So I would say that the main event of the diet is the bit up the front, the lots of meat, bit of organ, bit of bone, 80-10-10 kind of ratio. That's what they throw around. But my ratio would be like 70-10-10-10. So I like 10% plant matter, veg, whatever. Studies of dogs let off the lead, feral dogs, not just dogs we reared with humans that were taught to eat plant matter. But studies of feral dogs show they eat bugger all plant matter. But they are eating prey, wild prey, that have been feasting on wild plant matter. So they're eating a deeply nutritious diet. Wild prey is completely different nutritionally to the crap that we eat. So I would say that, yes, dogs tend to eat of small animals. They'll eat the whole thing. They'll eat small birds. They'll eat some insects, maybe now and again, but they'll eat whole rats. They might even eat most of a rabbit, but they won't eat the stomach. Once it gets bigger than a rabbit, the dog doesn't eat the intestines, okay? So we've never seen a video of a dog. Anytime we see dogs, or have seen a lot of dogs, bringing down sheep and lambs, they hunt and tire the sheep. First of all, gruesome way to go. They hunt and tire the sheep, and then they start eating it before it's even dead, because dogs don't have a killer blow. They don't have a go for the neck and choke it off like a jaguar. You think you would see dogs hanging off necks. They will hang off any part of the animal. So wolves bringing down elks and stuff, it's a hard watch, let me tell you. But dogs, particularly because they lack the the prey, they can't really hunt in packs anymore. They're not wolves, you know, they've lost that mentality. So they just run around barking and yipping and being dickheads. They're actually quite poor at bringing down big animals. But if you put those animals in a field and they can't get away, they will tire them out and they'll take the kids down. So it's awful. Anyway, the point is when they're eating them, they pull out the stomach and they pull out the intestines and they eat everything else on the inside. They don't eat the veg. So in answer to your question, we believe that absolutely some bits of fruit are fine for dogs. We think that like things like blueberries, a great tip for people, for themselves as well, is that the blueberries we buy, you're in a hot country there, you've got the tropics all part of the year, so you get your own berries the right way. But we're in like Ireland and England and we get blueberries in the supermarket at Christmas time. It's not right. We're not supposed to. And that's why when you pick them up and eat them, you go, they taste like shit. It looks like a blueberry, but it doesn't taste like a blueberry because it grew up in some crappy greenhouse with crappy soil, fertilized with nitrogen, as if that's all a blueberry needs, and over and over and over. So they make these big, wet things that aren't nutritious. Compare that to wild blueberries. They're called bilberries. You buy them dehydrated or freeze-dried. They come in Ziplocs, about 100 grams in a Ziploc. Now, you look at the price and go, bloody hell, that's a bit expensive. But they've sucked out 98% of the water out of the thing. So you get this deeply nutritious kind of berry that's fantastic. So if I was making my dog's food, instead of buying berries, and blackberries is where it's at nutritionally, anthocyanins and all this cool shit, I'd be buying a little bit of dried blueberries or the frozen blueberries in the supermarket. Frozen organic blueberries or wild blueberries as well. They don't taste great. They need a bit of sugar if you're putting them on a dessert. But for the dog, it's good enough. So a couple of little berries, you're eating an apple, you don't want the end of it. The dog can have that. Whatever. A little bit of fruit is okay. They don't need so much of the fruit. But with the veg, I do like a bit of veg. And so we think that we know dogs struggle to break down veg. They've got a very short, rapid digestive system. They don't have a gut flora waiting for it. So what we do is we usually, if we're making our own dog's food, this is what I recommend people do. Finding meat on the bone is easy. Finding chicken breasts and chicken thighs and beef mince at half price in Coles, eggs, all easy. So that's easy enough to do, the front end of it. The trickier bit is going to the butchers and say, look, give me a little bit of liver, a little bit of kidney. If you buy your steak off him and your sausages, you're going to get the liver and kidney for virtually nothing because nobody eats that stuff. So finding the organ meat can be a bit tricky, but you'll get it from a butcher. That's where that stuff is found. So you get your bit of liver and kidney and you go home and you chop it up into bits and you put it in a bowl. And then you get a saucepan, a little bit of water in the saucepan, and steam some dark greens and carrots. So simple. So a lot of the dark greens can come from frozen bags now, and I just take out 4 or 5 cubes of kale or spinach or whatever. Dark greens are great. Pop them in, steam them for a little bit, chop up a carrot, throw that in. You might even put in a clove of garlic or 2, keeps the worms away. Absolutely safe as you like. It's a natural way of keeping the worms away. You might get some pumpkin seeds. Seeds are fantastic. Dogs would eat birds and eat the intestines, so fermented seeds and stuff are brilliant. And pumpkin seeds are the best because they contain cucurbitacin, which kills worms as well. So you don't need chemical wormers. You just need to put in a couple of worm preventers, a tiny bit of garlic, a few pumpkin seeds into this steaming pot. And so you're steaming up this veg mix. I'll email you that later, James, if you want to put up this recipe for power cubes, I called it, trademark that. And so you put in all these veg ingredients and you're fine. I've got to use that potato, didn't need that, throw that in, if it's, whatever. And you're just putting in the stuff and you're filling up this pot. And if I had a very large dog and I couldn't afford to feed him an all-meat diet, if I couldn't afford to do it, I'd say, right, listen, before you jump back to high-carb dry food, which is going to cost you at the vets, but we know from the Brisbane Guide Dog study, work, I would say, okay, at that point, buddy, if you want to save a bit of money, 10% porridge. And so porridge is like porridge oats, okay? So we all make it, we all eat it, decent food, slow to digest carbs. So when it comes to carbs, if you have to eat them, you want them to be slower to digest. You don't want to spike that insulin. That insulin's the baddie. So you've got this, dark greens and your carrots and your pumpkin seeds and whatever bits are in it that you think is cool and you've read about. And you might throw in your blueberries at the end because you don't really need to cook them. Then I'd throw in porridge oats to soak up that excess water. In that water that turns green from the veg, that's all your B complex. You never throw out the water you steam your veg in. If you can drink it, great. If you can put it in your fruit and veg smoothies, don't throw it out. That's your B complex. It's brilliant stuff. It tastes rotten though. I've tried to drink it a few times. It's like, it's hard to get it down. I mean, I can drink shots of tequila and I hate tequila, but that green stuff is just like my stomach almost wants to refuse it. Anyway, so you got your veg, you've steamed it all up, your bits and pieces. Then you've got your organ meats that you chopped up. You pop them in. And then it's like, oh yeah, fish oil. I need a bit of fish oil. I don't have any sardines left, but I have this glug bit of fish oil in there. You might have a product that's a supplement that you think is cool. There's lots of different, like you can seaweed. I'm all about seaweed, so I'm always promoting seaweed as a supplement. It's just so easy. You get any Australian seaweed, you buy it half nothing. Pet kinds are all right. Human kinds are better because they don't use heat in the drying process. So you put in whatever you think is cool, all right, is my point. And you've suddenly got this big purple mess in front of you. Mix it all up and you put it into ice cubes. And you put it in, get silicone ice cube trays with lids on, because nobody likes the taste of a freezer. And you spread these all out over 4 or 5, 6 of these into your freezer. Freeze them overnight, then you pop your ice cubes into a big bag. These are power cubes, and they've got all the tail end stuff that you don't want to be running around thinking about every day. It's like, oh, have I given him some pumpkin seeds? Did you give him? When's the last time you got? Like, that is just wait. I'm too busy to be doing that. As much as I love the dog, you can't be doing that every single day. So instead, it's just like you get this dog, and it's like, tablespoon of beef mince, chicken thigh, power cube. Good luck, eat that, enjoy. Like, that's a great meal for a dog, and it's very simple. And you know, some people lay out their takeaway lunch boxes, and they like to have one meal a day in a lunchbox. Other people get clip closed lunch boxes and have like 3 meals a day, 3 days worth of food, because taking the food out every day can be a bit of a pain in the arse and you forget. So you get these clip closed lunch boxes, and people lay out a sardine in each one and a chicken thigh in each one, you know, and the beef mince, and then they crack eggs in and a sprinkle of salt, which is really nutritious. People underestimate how good salt is.
I was told salt and garlic should never go near a dog.
Yeah. No, garlic is in the allium family, which is where onion is. Now, onion is going to lay your dog out. You do not want to be giving your dog onion, so that is one to be respected. But not garlic. Garlic doesn't contain any of the thiosulfate that lays your dog out. So there's only ever been one study of garlic harming dogs, and it was beagles fed 125 grams of raw garlic. That's 25 cloves of raw garlic a day for 7 days. And after 7 days, their blood were a bit wrong. No shit. That's an overdose study. It's got no relevance to medicinal use of garlic, small amounts of it. Very, very nutritious. It's a cornerstone of natural veterinary medicine. Salt is electrolytes. Salt is just like, so think about it. You move to raw dog food. Now your dog's on a 0 salt diet.
Yeah.
You should see these goats. I'm going to send this video. There's a damn wall in Italy that is as vertical as anything needs to be vertical. It's a vertical dam wall. Have you seen these goats that just walk along the wall as if there's a path there? But it's unbelievable. They do that to get to the salt, and they bring their little kids along, tiny little footholds, and they're up hundreds of meters. It's stomach churning. So salt is really, really important. It's not just sodium and chloride. It's potassium and magnesium, strontium and thalidium, and all these words that you can't pronounce. There can be 50, 60 ingredients in Himalayan rock salt, pink salt, Oreo.
So just sprinkle a bit of rock salt on it.
Sprinkle a little bit of salt. You can even do better than that. If you're working your dog, or if you live in a hot country and your dog's sweating every day, which is your electrolytes being shed, because your electrolytes control the osmotic potential of your gut. That's why fitness people pump them when they're doing marathons and whatnot. So if you're working your dog in the heat, you would afterwards, you'd have 2 bowls of water, one fresh water, not tap water. Do your best to get filtered water into the dog, because tap water is chlorinated. Could you imagine if your 25% of your brain was nose and you're being fed bloody swimming pool water? It'd be horrible. That's why your dog wants to drink out of puddles and everything else except your tap water. So filtered water or boiled and cooled water in one bowl, and in the second bowl I'd have a little bit of salt dissolved into it. And that's his electrolytes. So which one do you want, buddy? Do you want the water or do you want the electrolytes? And they'll take what they need. And it's fascinating, you know. So
Joe, I'm glad you said that, because I've got a Brita water filter, and I'm always giving him filtered water. And like he got kennel cough recently from using the dog bowl at the park, and now we carry his little water. You've got the little like portable bowl with the bottle.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, nah, he's not having anything from that tap. I'll wait till he's back in the car. And then once I put him on his harness in the car, then he'll drink. He won't drink at the park, but he'll drink then. And people are like, that fucking dog's spoiled. And now I'm quite protective over his water. But you make exact sense there with the salt thing. Like, if I'm exercising him a lot, and myself, I've accidentally gone low sodium when I'm cutting weight for jiu-jitsu comps. I can't sleep. I'm restless. I'm agitated. And then it was only when I reintroduced high doses of salt after a training session, I was like, wow. I was like, this feels amazing.
That's interesting.
Yes, I didn't think about it being the same for a dog. And especially, like you say, in hot climates, if we end up walking him late in the morning at 9 a.m., most dog owners have their dogs in the shade. But me, I'm like, he's a fucking working dog. He'll put up with an hour at 25 Celsius, because I'm getting him back into the aircon later. I'll definitely try that, putting a bit of salt water in there, because I do wonder why sometimes he loves a puddle. And
or sometimes seawater. They'll drink some seawater, depends on what the ailment is. If you're low on
I thought he was just an idiot when he was having a little lick down there.
Yeah, or they drink a lot of seawater and puke, and people are like, what is he doing? They're looking for something. They're not that dumb. This process for any nerds that are out there that are enjoying this self-selection process that dogs have. It's called zoopharmacosi. Zoopharma, PHARMA, cognosy. And it means that animal knows how to heal itself. Monkeys do it, birds line their nests with cigarette butts to keep ticks away. Insects do it. If they're infected with a wasp, they'll eat one leaf. If they're infected with a different thing, they'll eat another leaf to poison themselves to get rid of it. And pregnant women will do it. You know, my wife ate a furious amount of apples the last pregnancy, and God help me if they weren't in the fridge. So, like, it's just something that we all have, but dogs do it a lot. And so you can actually do, if you're living in an apartment, you're in the middle of Bondi Beach, and you're not exactly in the middle of, like, you know, the wild. So what people do is they plant, you know, 5 or 6 things that the dogs will like to eat or like to drink. That's like, it's full of water. That's chamomile, cost me like €1. And German chamomile is a plant. So you can plant 4, 5, 6 pots out the back. Dogs like to eat grass. So you plant a pot of grass, wheat grass or barley grass. You might plant a garlic bulb into the soil. So you push a pointy end in and keep an inch of soil above. Dogs will eat garlic grass. They'll eat wheat grass. They'll eat chamomile, parsley. And so you can have those pots by the back door. And so when you let the dog out for a while, you can actually see him self-medicating on those things. Different types of water. Yeah, spirulina is great. It's also a binder. So if you've got toxins in your blood or bacterial infection, they'll eat spirulina. So you offer 2 or 3 different types of water, you know. The last addition to that electrolyte actually is if your dog is gut sick, you know, skip a meal. It happens, you know, shit happens, it's all. You skip a meal and you can add local honey to the water. So you've got a bit of salt. This is like diorolite. If you ever look at the ingredients of diorolite, like, it's just sodium and glucose, and it's like, how disappointing. That's not electrolytes. There's a huge amount of them, and sodium, that's it. So you can actually have good quality salt, is all doing for you and the kids, and a good bit of local honey, local bees. It's antibacterial. It's so good for you. You dissolve that, and there you go, buddy. Drink that, let them recover, and then move them onto a very digestible diet. I call it the diarrhea diet. Tinned salmon, there's a great addition. Oh, we've got to talk about these bits and pieces. Tins of salmon, tins of sardines, they cost nothing. 50 cents in Coles for a tin of sardines and tomato. What an addition for a dog or cat. I mean, it's pure protein. It's got omega in it. Yes, it's been cooked at 120 degrees for half an hour. But as long as you avoid the tins of fish in sunflower oil is the enemy. Seed oils are the enemy when it comes to cancer. So avoiding all those seed oils except olive oil. But cooked sunflower oil is vicious. Buy the sardines in fresh water or brine. Or tomato, because it's lycopene, it's anti-cancer, it's just tomato puree. And so what a cheap addition to any dog's bowl to make it more nutritious. Packets of cooked mussels, you know, all that sort of stuff is fantastic. But yeah, sorry, I could just talk all day about this.
No, this is fascinating. So one thing that tell me if I'm wrong with this as well. So I know you love sardines, but I buy them freeze dried.
Yeah.
And I know I'm paying a markup. I'm paying fucking $20 for a bag of sardines, but the idea of, if he jumps on the sofa with a dry sardine that crunches, I can forgive him. If he goes on there with a wet one and I see a sardine, I end up on the sofa. When these things are freeze dried, also for snacks, I had like a bag of finely diced lamb hearts that I used to like calm him down at night. When these are freeze dried, the process, is it making the food less nutritious?
No, freeze drying is just it's unbelievable. It's like it's about as damaging to your food as freezing. I mean, and that is very, very little. In fact, there's an argument to say when you buy frozen food, it's picked at the right time and it doesn't degrade because it's frozen. Whereas if you buy blueberries and they're allowed to rot, or apples or greenery, you know, we all eat the greens and kind of go, shit, I've left that in there too long. I'll eat it anyway because I'm miserable. But like, how much nutrients is in that? So there's an argument to say frozen food, it has a real good place. Freeze drying is unbelievable. Any country with a standing army has brilliant freeze dryers. So Australia, the US, Canada, the UK. So the foods, the tests of those foods are unbelievable. Just a step just below freeze drying. You pay for freeze drying, guys. That's an expensive way of feeding your dog. But if you're going camping or you just want to have some cool treats ready because they just don't go off, you know, this is why we feed the armies this stuff. It's a good way of preserving. It's great. But there's another way called dehydration. And a dehydrator you can buy for 40 quid online, delivered to your door, 40 quid, you know. And a dehydrator is this like large plastic thing with a fan on it. And you put your 2 or 3 little layers of meat, you buy your meat, whatever it is, you know, you chop it up fine, and you put it on the dehydrator 2 or 3 levels. And over the course of 24 hours, it just draws all the water out of it by blowing air across it. There's no temperature used in it. So it's not quite freeze drying, but it's just a cracking way of making your own treats. So listen, you can buy them if you have the means. If you want to dry them yourself, it's easy. A dehydrator is a great way to do it. So a lot of people are doing that. I would never allow my dog to eat fish inside the house. It's just, my wife would leave me. I just couldn't have it. Actually, fish heads cost you nothing. You've got a big dog, you're trying to save some money, get yourself down to someone that processes fish. And they say, lads, I'd love those fish heads there. And they're like, you what? Because it's waste for them. But fish heads are like the most nutritious part of the fish. This is why the Asians start at the head and move back. And they're right, of course. They're right about everything. Eyes, brains, these are important ingredients. Like the stuff called lutein, zeaxanthin, you'll only find them in the eyes. So these aren't in foods, but we know they're really good. We take lutein and zeaxanthin supplements to benefit our eye health. And it's like, where do dogs get that? They get it from eating eyes. So the nutrients gather in the prey animal, and then they eat that joint to benefit themselves. They eat pancreas, spleen, gizzards, hearts. Hearts are great for them because they're full of coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is good for your heart. So where do you find it when you're eating the prey animal? The heart. You know, it's called organotherapy. So fish heads, that kind of stuff, it's great. Dehydrated, freeze dried, fantastic. But they will get you on the price. But listen, it's a trade-off. You're living in an apartment. When you've got a garden and you can have a kelpie, you're having the lads over and the dog's going bananas in the kitchen, it's like a handful of sardines out into the garden, or a handful of blueberries out into the garden, eat that, and he's out there 15 minutes trying to dig up all the stuff out of the soil. That's behavioural enrichment. That's what we do for the zoo animals. And yet when it comes to feeding the dogs, it's just, bowl of dried nuts. What a crap way of feeding yourself. Food can be what people are doing. Lick mats, which is a really interesting bowl with lumps and bumps and flips, and they put the food in that. So the dog's spending 15 minutes trying to get it out. So they're putting it into Kongs, they're hiding it in the garden. There's just loads of ways to do it. People are barely using bowls. They're putting out tasting platters. And the reason they separate out the ingredients, as much as you think you look like a dickhead, in the initial few days, it's just to learn. Does your dog actually like kidney? My dog doesn't. Won't eat kidney. And, I was a vegetarian for 12 years. I despise the look of kidney. I mean, the process is wee all day. I mean, it's not the first thing I'm going to be eating. So I don't give him kidney because he just doesn't want it. So I mix it up in the food sometimes, but so, it's all these things are ahead of you, but initially keep it simple or people are going to think, oh my God, this guy's a freak.
I feel bad because when Alfie was a puppy, to stimulate him, I used to get the ends of toilet rolls or kitchen rolls. I'd bend them up and I'd put kibble in it just because he would go wild for it. But I didn't realise how hyper kibble was making him. Then he'd be a fucking shite for the next hour. Yeah. So then I'd do it again. So I'm on this roller coaster. And then
you do it again.
I don't realise how much he pisses so much less now I've taken him off kibble. And his poos are pretty more consistent. His behaviour could be age-related. But it's interesting you said that. I went to the butcher the other day. I went into Westfield, go downstairs, go to butcher. I go, hey, mate, I said, I'm here to buy stuff for my dog. I was like, and I thought being a butcher, he'd be like, cool, I've got these raw meaty bones, I've got these offcuts, I've got this shite. Tell you what, mate, give me $50 and I'll just put a load of shite in a bag. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
He pointed to the fridge where they had pre-made dog food in there.
Yeah.
I went into a butcher's and he pointed at dog food. I was like...
That's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was like, fuck. I was really disappointed. So I go opposite into Coles and I go into the biggest Coles and I shop in Woolies. I only went to Coles because Coles have more stuff for dogs than any other supermarkets. So I go in there and they've got this massive chicken. I've never seen chicken necks or chicken, frames or anything. I've never seen that before in my life, but they're there.
Yeah.
So now I'm in those places, but I will try and find a butcher or someone that will give me. I'll be like, look, mate, what are humans not eating?
What have you got?
My dog
yeah. The problem is with the butchers, like if you're in the middle of a big city, you're in Sydney there, so what the difference is these days, butchers sell meat. They're not necessarily processing it. So it used to be that they'd have a cow at the back and they dismember it, and then they want you to come in the door and sell you all the bits that they can't sell. That used to be the way until about 20 years ago when we started destroying butchery as a business and started doing central slaughtering, which is grossly inhumane for the poor animals that have to finish their life there. Shipping animals all around the world to get to this stupid slaughtering plant and, processing their meat in front of them getting killed. Horrible. Much better you go to a local butcher's and get killed there. That's gone. Certainly in the middle of Sydney, they're not killing animals, So you're getting a guy that gets his meat shipped into him in packets. So he doesn't have these bits and pieces. He's not going to order in tripe, which is the belly of the cow. It stinks. Who's going to buy that? James mightn't come in this week and I'm left with a bloody 2 kilos of tripe honking out the kitchen. So those bits and pieces, you need to find a butcher that's killing his own animals. Good luck with that in the middle of Bondi. So if you're out in the outskirts, when you get your garden, those butchers will be more ready for you, and they will have the bits and pieces you need. So that's the trade-off. In Ireland, people in the cities, in Britain, you got to get out to find the bits and pieces that you need. So what the problem is, butchers are starting to feed dogs, but butchers don't know anything about canine nutrition. They don't give a damn. So what you get is spoiled meat and fatty meat, because they don't make money selling fat to humans. They sell all the muscle to humans, and they're left with the fat off the kidneys that goes in the bag. So you get this really high fat mix, and it's like, I'm looking for meat muscle. And they're like, well, we sell meat muscle to humans at about 3 times the price we're selling to you. So you're not getting the same meat muscle.
It's
So
about getting that balance.
yeah, you just need to go in there and buy stuff for humans and don't tell me. Say, look, have you got a cow's heart? That's something they can do. You might need to start changing where you go shopping. Go to the Asian markets, then you're going to find some weird stuff. Did you know that the second most likely cause of dry food is recalled 10 times more than raw dog food in the US for salmonella. 10 times. Now, bearing in mind that the US permits salmonella in its food chain, raw dog food has to below zero. And it still manages to do that 10 times better than dry food. Isn't that unbelievable? That shows you how manky the ingredients are going to dry food. The second most likely cause of dry food recall in the US is the presence of sodium pentobarbital, SPB, this chemical. That chemical is the chemical they use for euthanizing cats and dogs. What? Surely not. Absolutely. There's 5 slaughtering companies in the US, 5 rendering companies in the US where they stew up all the waste of the meat industry, and 3 of them accept cats and dogs. So when you buy meat meal for your pet food from these plants, you don't know what you're getting. So when it says on the back, animal derivatives, so it can't even tell you if it's chicken or beef or whatever. So sodium pentobarbital, SPB, just type in SPB recall, pet food recall. And the FDA just repeatedly, 100,000 tonnes here, 50,000 tonnes here, 55 brands here, 10 brands here. Sodium pentobarbital is weaker and weaker in animals if you use more and more of it. So we slag off like Asians for the process this problem of eating dogs. I was lecturing over in China and also in Taiwan doing this, and very interesting, a bloody tough deal sometimes. But then look what the US is doing. They're stewing up roadkill, restaurant grease. All that stuff goes into the rendering facilities in the US. Not in Europe, because we had the BSE crisis and we freaked out and we said, okay, lads, the only stuff we're rendering is good quality meat and bone. We incinerate everything else. In the US, they stew up that and sell it back to you as meat meal. So, that's a real thing. That's not a drama. I've got about 5 pages of it in the book there. I've written many articles on my website there. It's Dogs First. Check it out. I mean, what horror that this stuff is being fed back to cats and dogs. I mean, it's abhorrent. It won't happen in Australian pet food, but I do like to put that drama out there just so people understand what they're dealing with. It's a funny old industry. I think there's value for money, guys. I mean, we know that dogs are going to be healthier. We've got these studies showing they're less inflamed. For anybody listening with recurring skin, ear, or gut conditions, we have studies now to show you that this is a good idea. At least try what myself and James are doing here. At least try it for 2 weeks and tell me your dog's skin condition is still as bad. And it won't be. He'll be slightly better. And you'll go, ooh, maybe I'll persist another 2 weeks. And then suddenly you'll look back on this product and go, how did I fall for that? So just give it a go. And most people have a dog with recurring issues. And it's the recurring bit that you're constantly doing something wrong. It's not normal for dogs to be going around with skin conditions. Like, humans don't do that. It should be a rare issue. But it's common now in pets because of the crap food they're being fed. That's the number one issue,
I think it was a week ago, Alfie had kennel cough, but we actually took him to a vet, and the vet was like, oh, I'm not sure what's going on here. But then it got so bad that in the middle of the night we had to take him to a vet, and I was worried he choked on something. So
Yeah.
when he was trying to clear his throat, I was like, fuck, if there's a bit of bone in there or
Yeah.
he's eating something we've not been watching. Then when the vet took him into another room and you're suddenly taken away from your dog and you're left in the waiting area, you start thinking about the prices and consequences you'd pay to have your dog back. So the point I want to make from that is your book is £30, $60, whatever it is, and it's incredibly almost, don't take this wrong way, it's encyclopedic in the sense that any topic that you wanted to cover, even just one of those topics could put your mind at ease, whether it's carbohydrates, wheat gluten, chemicals, all of this stuff. And I found it incredibly easy to kind of break down and have my mind put at ease, even just some of the quotes that you put in there. So for anyone listening to this that wants more information, even if they don't want to read all 450 pages, it might just be one topic that they want from it. I strongly suggest they do it. I'll put a link for it in the description. But
Awesome.
Like you say, thank you so much for putting my mind at ease. I know there are going to be thousands of people listening to this who's also going to be put at ease. There's also going to be a lot of people that end up having a better relationship with their dog and their pet. And like you say, you might be spending the same amount of food. You might fork out a little bit on the book or whatever. But when your dog, they have that cliche quote with humans that a man has many wishes, but a sick man has one.
Yeah,
But
nice. That's
it's
good.
only when your pet is in harm's way or you're at the vet, that anxiety, that you'd look back and you'd think, what would I do to mitigate that looking back in time? And I think so many of us, as far as a preventative cause, can, most of us care about our dogs more than us. So I think that this conversation will help liberate the relationships between a lot of pet owners and pets. So I want to thank you very much for giving up your time and coming on here and discussing these things. And we could even use the comments on YouTube or whatever to revisit any of these topics in greater detail. Usually I'm trying to schedule the podcasts to go out every Monday, but I'm gonna say after this to Madeline, who helps me edit, I'll be like, we need to get this out this weekend. We need to get it out.
Love it.
Because
nice one.
there are people out there about to buy another fucking bag of dry food.
Yeah.
We could save a dog's life. So I'll get onto it. But yeah, thank you. Have you got any closing remarks or things you'd like to say to anyone?
Yeah, no, I think, like, you know, whatever about buying the kind of the bigger books, like, that's what I meant, like, that's a big thing you took on there, and I could see you, I was following your comments, I was like, you're actually reading every single chapter of that. I've got followers that, like, you know, do a chapter here, and then they move to this chapter when they have an issue, so I could see that info worked for you, but most people want their info a bit more digestible, pardon the pun. So, like, I have a website there, dogsfirst.ie. There's a raw FAQ section that kind of goes through the, like, how do I transition, you know, how do I even move on to this product? Can I mix it with kibble? Basic kind of questions. How much of this do I feed the dog? You know, these questions are answered on every single raw feeding website out there, from your favorite local producer to my one. There's videos out there. You can go to YouTube. We're doing courses, that kind of stuff. So there's a number of good natural feeding vets in Australia. What people will find is that they won't have a vet that's on side. Okay, and I want to enthuse on people that it's not people. You'll start reading the dark side. You'll go to the dark. You'll start reading stuff, and people will say the bloody vet's in it for the money, as if like selling dry food makes them lots of money. There's not great margins on dry food, let me tell you, because they're so busy spending so much money on the veterinary universities to produce all the bullshit. But the actual vet of the coalface is not in it for the money. They're not in there to make your dog sick. They don't mean, they genuinely believe this product is the best for your pet. Okay, fair enough, they haven't read any science or studies or anything like that on it, but they mean the best. And so when you go and say, you know, I was thinking about feeding my pet some fresh food, and they go, oh, ye gods, you know, you're going to kill him. And it's like, no, I'm pretty comfortable in doing it. Like, you know, you do want to try and stay friends with this vet. You want a good, honest relationship with this person, because if something happens, you need to have a kind of, it's got to be a decent relationship. But if you don't, if you can't get this person on side, you can still use them for any of the drama that might happen in your pet's life. But a number of natural vets now you can actually contact and talk to on Zoom, as I'm talking to James here. So you can actually get a lot of help from vets online that do calls and stuff. So the point is, don't be antagonistic with these guys. They are the hardest working people out there. To get into veterinary university is hard. To go through the 4 years is shit hard. I mean, you've got to be the doctor of all animals, and not just like a general practitioner. You've got to be a physiotherapist, anaesthetist, surgery, run a business. You know, it's a hard gig. So we're trying to bring the vets along with this. They are reluctant, to say the least, but they are moving slowly. You can clearly see this movement. The big companies are buying out all the natural pet food companies now, so it's starting to happen. There's less incrimination, there's less drama, so it's starting to happen now, and that helps. It's all the people, you know, they got the guns, we got the numbers. So it's only by people being sound about this, talking to people, being calm, relaxed, look how you feed the kids, you haven't a clue what you're doing there. Talk to the vet, get them on side. If it doesn't work, there's no point arguing with them, because it can get a bit entrenched. There's a lot of heat there, and so I just kind of tell people, watch out, that might be around the corner. But there's plenty of vets that'll have the conversation with you, so don't fear.
Thank you very much for that. Like, I'm excited to get that out there. I'm excited for people to listen to it. Like, it's incredibly insightful, and
great.
You put my mind at ease with a lot of things, a lot of questions. I'll put links to the book, links to your website, and links to your socials. Because I couldn't find you when I got your book. I was like, where is this? Where is it?
That's torture to hear, and I am working on. Like, we're doing shows all the. I do this Raw Pet Medics on Tuesday nights. It's free for people, you know. That's gaining slowly but surely. But now we have this TikTok freak, and he's saying, "Why are you?" Some podcasts describe it recently as you're killing a cow every week and you're just eating the sirloin steak and leaving the rest of the cow there. He says, if you're putting out all this content, he says, get somebody to chop it up a million ways and put it all over TikTok. He's like, we've got all these quips and jokes and facts, and he says, you're just giving it out for free. So we're learning, you know, but we came at it not really thinking it was going to be getting this big. I just came out to get the book out and move on to the next thing, but now it's just drawing me in. It's becoming an absolute obsession. So yeah, I need to focus on that somehow.
With your where it says dogs first on your Instagram page, I
Yeah.
think this is for people watching. I think you should put your name there so it comes up and it's easier to be searched. I'm not going to lecture
Okay.
you on it, but
Yeah. No,
that'll
lecture
help
away.
people as well. I'll put all of these links here because I'm sure you're putting out some information. I'll give you the full file from this podcast as well. Clip it up
Nice.
as you like. Get whatever bits you want out. I'll be making clips and sending you some as well. We'll do some
How did-
collaborative. Go on.
How did you like you write these 3 books, okay? Incredibly successful, okay? So you're nailing that. Did you come at this? Did you come at the social? You're killing it so on social media. Where did you get that knowledge from? Did you write these books and go, oh shit, things are taking off. I better start equipping myself with these bits and pieces. How come? How come you
Not
have
really.
all that?
So I started personal training about 9 years ago, and I was in a gym in Bracknell in the UK. And if a client cancelled, I used to write a blog or like get on WordPress and, hey guys, a client would say, what's the difference between potato or sweet potato? I'll go, do you know what? I haven't got a fucking clue, but give me an hour and I'm going to go to Waitrose and I'm going to sit there and have a latte and fucking find out. And then I'm going to repurpose 3 blogs that I've read from people I've never heard of, and I'm going to give you my summary of it.
Nice.
But then at the bottom of it, I just say to people like, at the end of the day, who fucking cares? You slept 4 hours last night. Stop discriminating a potato. And then, you know, people were like, oh, I can get on with this.
Yeah.
Then Facebook added the feature of doing live videos. So then when people cancelled, I'd go live and I'd be like, hey, I've just had Snickers protein bar. It's a fucking Snickers bar that's got a bit of protein in. It's not going to revolutionize the world. But then if someone had pissed me off or I'd seen like a rant or something online, or like I remember like I used to have beef with Joe Wicks. I went, he's jumping around his front room like a fucking bellend. And people were like, well, that's refreshing. And I realized the more I went in on people, the more I could kind of cultivate. And the whole idea was, whenever I'm on social media, I take very close attention and care to what I share. And I ask myself, why did I share it? Why was I compelled? What was the reason behind it? Why did I send it to a friend? So I tried to capture those emotions when I made content. I tried to make people feel seen, even if they were the minorities. And I would try and get in people's minds, because when 90% of people are like, hey guys, have an avocado, go enjoy your life. And I was like, hey, why don't you stop being a fucking prick at weekends and do that?
Yeah.
That 10% were like, I like this guy, I'm sharing him. The book thing came later. I had about 300,000 followers before my first publisher approached me, and I actually didn't want to do a book. But then I realized that there are probably a lot of people online who think I'm a prick. And I was like, how can I have someone walk into Tesco's, go, there's that fucking prick from the internet, to pick up my book? And how can I capture them on every page where they go, oh, what's this prick got to say? And then they look and they go, well, that's a fair point. And, you know, the idea of a book was that someone that hates me might pick it up and buy it, and I could change their life even though they still hate me. So it all came the wrong. And every chapter that I wrote, I was like, how could I have one of my biggest critics arrive on this page and be compelled to buy it? So
Nice.
it came.
That's pressure.
It came in reverse, and I have just as many people unfollow me as follow me a week. And to be fair, I just tripped across it. But for me, the social game, I like to be. I'm a very competitive person. I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I like everything. To me is like a game. I'll probably have a game of Call of Duty this morning before the dog's back. Like everything I'm competitive about. So any realm I'm in, even at the moment, I appreciate, and I'm very aware that you have more dog nutrition than I do, but I now want to be higher in that hierarchy where I can go, oh yeah, if I don't know, ask me what you want about dog nutrition. If I don't know, I'll go to Conor. But then I like being higher in the hierarchy where someone goes, yeah, he's on kibble and an egg, and I go, oh, you're halfway there. You know, like I enjoy having the information so I can share it. So that's why I kind of like the strategy. I like the side things. And when we stop recording from here, I'll probably be like, hey, try this, because I like to see people progress. I've been a coach for 9 years, so my job has literally been, I see where you're at. Let me give you some ideas of how you could do it better. And then ultimately, some of you will end up paying me for it and some of you won't. So that's the approach.
Yeah, like, you know, we're all competitive. There's no doubt. Like, maybe it's a man thing, but it's not, clearly women can be competitive too. But like, you know, when I was writing that book, and you know, you don't talk about it much, but anyway, like when I put so much pressure on myself, because I've got this thing where I've got peers, and like, I'm not a vet. You're not a vet. You've got a doctorate studying the effects of nutrition on behavior. We didn't even talk about behavior today, guys. There's some really cool stuff in studies show when you said there's a change. Did you say there was a change in behavior? There is, guys. You can expect a bit more. You said the shitty food winds them up. That's an absolute fact. You know, kids after a birthday party get the crap food into them 20 minutes later. They're just horrible to be around. You know, this is what you're feeding your dog, and then you're trying to train them. But anyway, so when I wrote the book, I'm surrounded by these really top vets who are churning out studies, and like it's pressure. And you've also got an entire veterinary industry that despises you, you know, and waiting for you to fail. And when books come out, they do hatchet pieces on them, on the person writing it. And I spent 10 years writing that, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning kind of stuff. But in the back of my head, all I wanted to be was the very best book on canine nutrition. I wanted my peers, whatever about the public, I kind of sacrificed my public a bit. And I said, I just want my peers to say, that is a great book. And I put myself under so much pressure. And like, eventually, I think that's what happened. I could have written a more digestible recipes and friendly stuff and do the few cartwheels and get people to like me and not say anything too incriminating about the veterinary industry because we want to all be friends. And I'm like, no, this is the fucking truth of it. This is the dark side of it. You got to understand that, because once you understand that it's all a magic show, then you really don't have any choice but take the leap. You know, come on, put up your big boy pants and on you go and feed the dog real food. Because if you think there's an alternative that's suitable, well, then you'll always fall back to that. But if you know that alternative is doomsday, then you kind of go, okay, actually, I do need to make the leap. So yeah, I got that I have the competitive streak for the book, but I never got it with social media. I need to get that. I need to bring my team sport, ball sport need to win onto social media. And I do. I look at people that are doing better than me in social media, and I go, shit, you know, and I use them daily. I can kind of say, I need to get going on that. But I've only just switched onto the social media side of things recently.
Think about it like this. There are people out there that are driving 25 minutes out of their way to go get their dog the best dry food. Yeah. The effort and the investment isn't the issue. The issue is they're not putting it in the right place. Yeah. So for yourself, it's not that you're not doing the effort or anything like that. It's just about directing it into a place where you get the best return. So like and imagine this, right? I'm not your business coach. You could hire someone on Upwork for $10 an hour to clip your longer format stuff. You could then give them permission into your socials to then post the clips, and you could just leave them there to do their thing. Yeah. I'll collaborate some posts with you when the podcast goes out. But then I'm going to be coming back and checking on your pages to make sure you're up to it. And if not, I'll be sliding into your DMs, giving you some abuse. And if not, I'll get in touch with you. Missus.
Abuse me, James. Abuse me. How many people say that to you? But no, I like that. I totally get what you're saying about the Upwork, and I have a few people around me like that. And when I use them correctly, they're fantastic. So it usually becomes me getting so stressed with, like, I'm trying to put together these courses. I do them myself, and I shoot them, and I'm trying to do the audio, I'm trying to do it, and I'm like, why am I doing this bit of it? I should just record the content and then just dump it on someone. And it's, you know, I've got
imagine if you could go up, imagine you could go up to anyone in a dog park and grab them and just be like, oi, you should be fucking doing this. They might not like you, but you made their life better. And that's what I like to think about my approach with stuff. Like, I go up to someone in the gym, they go, I don't want to help. I go, well, good, but fucking listen. You squat, raise your heels, you're moving like shit, move the bar, get the pad off your back. Oh, I like the pad. I didn't ask you what you fucking like. Do that. Stop lifting so heavy because you're not that strong. Do that for the next 4 months. They go, that guy was a prick, but at least he helped him. You know, so with the dog food stuff, you need to put this down people's throats, because ultimately it's going to benefit their dog. And there are going to be people that are butthurt, and there are going to be people that have said, well, I fed my dog dry food for 12 years and the dog's 12 years old. Well, imagine how fucking older it could have been. Imagine how many less trips the nice guy element of it. Sometimes you almost need to be a villain in some respects so you can be a hero to some people. And
I kind of am that character. I'm the kind of guy in the canine nutrition. Like there's other versions of me who have millions of followers, and like, you know, they're pleasant and they're kind of they're very much more digestible and friendly and everything, and I'm sure they call them day and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, okay, and I am definitely the guy that is kind of more. I curse when we just did a presentation there in Birmingham there on the weekend, and I got off the stage, and Nick, who's this big vet, he went, fucking hell, man, you cursed quite a lot up there on that stage. So I am in that kind of role, but I'm definitely not. I'm not as the way I would be with my pals. I'm not kind of. I still hold back because I'm kind of afraid of the backlash, and you don't want to upset people, you know, and that's not going to bloody work either, you know. So unfortunately, you do have to break a few eggs sometimes. So I will take the James Smith approach a little bit more. I know it's.
If you want to save energy, just be yourself.
Yeah, totally.
You know, And then and imagine this, let's say you rile up a few thousand people and they think you're a fucking knob because of it. All you need to do, this is what I say to people, say, what's my motive? And I just leave them with that and I'll leave.
Yeah.
Just leave them with that. Your motive is to improve the lives of dogs, which improves the lives of owners. My job is to improve the lives of people so they can improve the lives of people around them. I didn't say you had to like how I do it. Yeah. They can't argue with why you do it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not comparing you to Katie Hopkins, but I remember one time. No, you're absolutely not, man. I should listen. I've only heard so much, but like I remember sitting there watching Katie Hopkins. Right, she was up on stage. She was doing the Late Late Show in Ireland. Okay, this long running shit show at the moment, and she stood there and she was talking about obesity, and I'm sure you would agree with most of the stuff she said. I certainly did, and I'm just putting my hand up there. It's a fact what she was saying. And she said she was being slagged off. It's not fair. And of course they had people that were, obesity is fine, and they have the whole club for how fine obesity is, which, as you said in a previous kind of a documentary, was like, yeah, it's because it probably didn't work out for them, and so they're trying to shift the worldview to make the position they're in look more okay for them, if just mentally. Anyway, the point was, she just says to the audience, 300 people in this little audience, she goes, hands up when a really enormous person gets on the plane and they're walking down the plane. In your head you go, God, I hope they don't sit beside me. And I thought that is a fair question that she just put out to the population, but you need to be on camera to sit there and put your hand up and go, yeah, no, like, I'm a big guy, I'm 6'4", you know what I mean? I already am taking up the person beside me, and there just wouldn't be room for two giant. If I saw an 8-foot man walking in, I think the same thing. Unless it was a basketball player I knew, I don't want them sitting beside me, too big. And not one person put their hand up. And he says that, she goes, this is the problem. She goes, you are all absolutely terrified to kind of speak your mind or even kind of agree with me that you think I'm a beast. She goes, I'm not a beast. I'm saying the stuff you're just too afraid to say. And I remember kind of thinking away, as much as she's got fucking issues, my God, I kind of came away thinking, fair dues, that woman is speaking what she believes to be the truth. And I just thought, every single person in that audience, at least half of them were agreeing with her, but they were too scared to say it. And I just thought, yeah, Jesus, there's a strength in that. But anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about Katie Hopkins.
We got a pandemic of cognitive dissonance.
Oh, it's a fact. That is an absolute fact. And you don't offend anybody. Bloody hell, don't offend anyone. Jesus Christ, what has happened? If it wasn't for comedians, we would all be absolutely doomed. You know what I mean? Can't offend anyone. You have a right to be offended, but just don't tell me about it. Just don't listen and go away. There's that Ricky Gervais joke where he comes in and he walks into the town square and there's an ad for guitar lessons on the wall. Do you see that? And he goes, I don't want fucking guitar lessons. He's like, just because I'm advertising it doesn't mean you have to fucking do it, But anyway, listen, bloody hell, we could go on. So enjoy your day, James. Your day's only starting. So have you had your swim? Have you been down the beach yet?
Not yet. I've got another hour of being dog free and then I'll take it from there. Mate, once again, thank you so much for coming
absolutely.
on.
It was cool.
I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to get this one out. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers, James. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.